In November of 1997, a prominent married couple disappeared from their elegant Seattle mansion. Their breakfast nook was prepared for two, their coffee mugs still steaming faintly, but their Lexus was missing. And so were they. For months, their names dominated the news cycles. For years, their images adorned missing persons posters across the Pacific Northwest. And for decades, detectives struggled in vain to unravel what truly occurred within the high walls of their idyllic lakeside haven. Some claimed they fled. Some claimed they were eliminated. But the reality is far more bizarre than anyone could have conceived. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell because today we're delving into one of the most shadowy, most unsettling vanishing cases you've never encountered. The residence on Evergreen Drive still appeared pristine from the curb. A wraparound deck, perfectly pruned evergreens shaped into elegant spirals, and a wrought iron fence that exuded affluence and refinement without ostentation. To the passers-by who jogged along its winding path, it was a symbol of stability, a home that had hosted galas and milestones, meticulously orchestrated events that lingered into the misty evenings. But if you ventured inside the mansion now, you would discover something different. Cobwebs, quietude, a subtle odor of dampness rising from the cellar and on the breakfast table. Still, after all these years, a pair of porcelain vases, flowers wilted mid-bloom, as though the moment itself had been halted. The Langfords had been absent for 23 years. Alexander and Sophia Langford, the pair everyone revered, coveted, gossiped about. He, a surgeon-turned-venture capitalist who ascended seamlessly from one empire to another. She, a freelance curator with a closet as meticulously assembled as her museum exhibits. They appeared to navigate Seattle's elite circles unburdened by hardship. The Langfords were striking. They were captivating. And above all, they were invincible until the evening they vanished. It started with quiet. Sophia's sister couldn't contact her via phone. Alexander skipped a board meeting. Their gardener arrived to find the side door ajar and the security system offline. On the marble kitchen island, a purse sprawled open. Sophia's its items strewn as if abandoned in haste. In the primary suite, the bed was made crisply but unoccupied. The Langfords had evaporated without evidence. For weeks, search teams scoured the forested paths near their grounds. Drones surveyed the Cascade Mountains. Theirs was the sort of mystery that commanded scrutiny. A duo whose portraits adorned upscale journals, now gazing from investigative drawings and evening broadcasts. But every clue fizzled. And then 4 months later, a breakthrough, a vehicle. Their Lexus deserted off a secluded forest road 50 miles north. The keys still in the slot, the suede seats marred by dew. On the driver's side mat, subtle marks, blood per the initial analyses, but insufficient to verify foul play, insufficient to establish anything. What it did establish was graver. That the Langford tale had depths no one had pondered. Because when detectives checked the VIN, when they rifled the console, when they followed financial trails linked to the investment accounts, what they uncovered dismantled everything the community believed. Alexander Langford had another persona, another existence, another kin. And Sophia wasn't who she appeared either. It was a mystery that would spiral into something much bleaker than a lost person's probe. It would expand into a labyrinth of investment scams, hidden visas, and a chain of personas concealed across the Northwest. A union constructed on illusions and reflections fracturing under the burden of truths that defied concealment. 2 decades on, the narrative still looms over Seattle like a fog bank. Periodically, a lead drips into the precinct. A glimpse in Idaho, a medical file aligning with Alexander's pseudonym in Montana, a purse discovered at a flea market in Portland. Strikingly akin to Sophia's. Each hint revives the inquiry, and each time the facts elude once more. But tonight, we revisit Evergreen Drive, to the breakfast table with its wilted vases, to the spot where in flawless partnership melted into one of Washington's most harrowing evaporations. Because if you strip away the facade, you'll uncover something rotting below. The Langfords were not casualties of a chance offense. They were not merely unfortunate. They were actors in a narrative far odder than lore. One where affection was militarized, faith was contorted, and endurance meant transforming into another utterly. The dual existence had commenced long prior to their vanishing, and it persists in unfolding today. The impound lot reeked of corrosion and grease. Lines of battered cars rested under stark spotlights, their shattered panes gleaming like vacant stares. Officer Michael Hale positioned at the wire fence, arms crossed firm, awaiting the tow truck to deposit the Lexus onto the dirt yard. It had been 4 months since Alexander and Sophia Langford disappeared. For months of silent lines, barren trails, and locals who insisted the pair had merely absconded. Some thought the Langfords had liabilities. Others murmured about liaisons. A handful hinted at something sinister, something linked to corporate espionage. But tonight, facing the Navy Lexus RX, Hale sensed a pivot. The initial tangible fissure in the veneer. The vehicle seemed commonplace initially, merely weathered from months forsaken in the Cascades. A fine layer of grime streaked the bonnet. The interior, soft gray, had been blemished by moisture seeping through a split moonroof. The keys still swung from the ignition, and a litter of pine needles adhered to the mats. But it wasn't the disrepair that knotted Hale's gut. It was the particulars. The console pried wide with registration under an alternate name. The faint crimson blotch on the driver's mat too somber to be oxidation. And the subtle intentional gouge etched into the console, a lone letter. S. Catalog all, Hale directed the forensic crew as they orbited the car with lenses. Seal the keys. Dust every plane. One tech bent near the driver's seat. Boss, you'll need to view this. Hale knelt. At the rim of the mat, wedged partially beneath the track, was a slim strip of card. He donned gloves and extracted it. A voucher. Seattle fuel stop dated 4 days post the Langfords' last sighting. That fact single-handedly revised the chronology. Until now, sleuths had presumed the duo evaporated on November 15th, the evening they skipped their brunch booking at the Harborview Lodge. Hypotheses had gathered around that dusk. A burglary, a hijacking, perhaps an impromptu escape. But if the Lexus had been refueled at a station days afterward, somebody had been vital and mobile. Somebody had sustained the tale after the populace presumed it concluded. Hale tucked the voucher into an proof pouch. His heartbeat accelerated behind him. The crane operator coughed into the dirt. Vehicle wasn't concealed well. Merely parked off Forest Service Road 312 by an ancient fir grove. Astonished it lingered unnoticed. Hale scowled. And no alerts prior today. None. Some hiker likely noticed it this week. Phoned it. The tech glanced rear at the Lexus, its beams capturing a glint of shine from the glass. Something about it tugged at him. Why forsake a car where discovery was inevitable? Why abandon keys in the ignition? Papers in the console? Unless that was the intent. It wasn't mere desertion. It was performance. The following dawn, Seattle roused to banners. Langford vehicle located in wooded clearing. Lost couple enigma intensifies. Journalists besieged Evergreen Drive, thrusting recorders against the wrought iron fence. Film teams angled cameras at the vacant drive. Neighbors in fleece vests and hiking boots provided clips. Wonderful folks, no foes, always private. So odd, just gone. Within the mansion, Detective Laura Kane examined the kitchen like a staged scene. Sophia's purse still rested on the marble counter, mascara wands tumbling free inside. 2 espresso cups lingered by the basin, both partially emptied. The brew turned to sludge. And in the nook, those vases, blooms suspended in decay. Kane knelt by a cabinet, sifting through stacks of statements. Her gaze sharpened at a bank ledger. Several debits in Eugene, Oregon from mere weeks pre-vanishing. Luxury inns, antique shops, withdrawals, all under Sophia's moniker. She rapped her stylus against the sheet. Why journey to Oregon sands informing kin? Why lodge in inns when you possess a palace? Her colleague, Detective Marcus Ruiz, propped against the island, limbs folded. Perhaps they were escaping briefly. Kane denied with a headshake. And forsake all. Mobiles, documents, attire. It misaligns. She arrayed the ledgers across the island. Motifs surfaced. Acquisitions distant from Seattle under titles that mismatched. Vouchers stashed in Sophia's purse displayed variant autographs, nuanced shifts in script, some tidy, some angled, one dashed in rush. It was as if somebody had been sampling personas like garments. By week's close, the Lexus divulged further enigmas. Labs affirmed the blotch on the mat was blood, but not solely one individual's. 2 unique signatures. Neither aligned with Alexander or Sophia. That revelation exploded through the bureau like a bomb. Might be residual. Ruiz proposed dourly, scanning the lab dossier. Somebody else hemorrhaged their prior. The Langfords might have been oblivious. Or, Kane rebutted, they accompanied another. Somebody unreferenced. Her tone resonated through the proof chamber, where snapshots of the vehicle pinned a bulletin. The etchings, the smudges, the voucher, the console with papers of a man named Ethan Cole. No seatlight knew an Ethan Cole, but in Oregon that title held significance. Kane ringed it in crimson. Below it, she inscribed a sole term, the dual existence. The coastal highway unfurled before Detective Laura Kane like a band of weathered pavement. Mist rising from the waves on either flank. She clutched the wheel of the plane's sedan. Her colleague Ruiz napping in the rider's seat, his shades slipping down his nose. Oregon wasn't unfamiliar ground for her. She'd traversed these paths years past while tailing a runaway inquiry. But this excursion differed. This wasn't a pursuit of an unknown. This was the dismantling of two individuals whose images adorned ornate mantles above Evergreen Drive hearths. Individuals everyone presumed they comprehended. They had departed Seattle at first light, the Lexus papers sealed in the boot. Bank vouchers. That Eugene's path. The console registration under the title Ethan Cole. It was all they possessed. But it sufficed to warrant the trek. Stir, Kane mumbled, jostling Ruiz as they neared the town bounds. We've arrived, Ruiz massaged his visage. Doesn't seem the sort of locale tycoons frequent. Kane stayed mute. She maneuvered into a fractured lot outside the Pacific Breeze Inn, its LED sign sputtering in the hazy morn. The ledger from Sophia's card had noted this locale 2 weeks pre her evaporation. The inn lobby smelled of musty brew and salt. A radio hummed in the nook, set to a talk show with volume muted. Behind the desk lounged a woman with faded locks and a thick northwestern drawl. Morning, Kane initiated, displaying her shield. Detectives from Seattle. Seeking logs from November. Suites booked under Sophia Langford or Ethan Cole. The woman reclined, brow furrowed. Langford no bell. Cole. She rummaged a drawer, digits trailing over forms. She halted, then drew a slip loose. Ethan Cole reserved for 4 nights, cash payment. Arrived in a silver SUV, with a lady, late 30s perhaps. Auburn hair, stylish. They avoided surnames, just given. He endorsed all. Ethan. She endorsed not. Kane sensed her heartbeat ascend. Did others observe them? Made mention they isolated. Suite reeked of incense. They departed premature, no formal exit. Keys on the bureau. She wavered, then appended. Made noted else. Believed she overheard them quarreling the third eve. Elevated tones, then hush. Suite 8 still positioned at the row's end. Blinds shut, the portal's coat flaking under the fog. Kane entered. It smelled vaguely of humidity, though the linens had been removed ages ago. Yet, traces persisted. Gouges on the budget nightstand. An incense scar in the rug and incised subtly into the lumber of the lavatory portal, nearly unseen unless illumination struck precise. S.L. Sophia Langford had been present. Ruiz squatted by the basin. Observe this. He lifted a tiny flask jammed behind the pipes. The tag ripped off, but within rested 3 tablets, soft green. Tag it, Kane stated. Each element augmented the enigma. A duo existing under bogus titles, disputing, abandoning items like trails, and all distant from the palace where their impeccable existences had been enacted. By dusk, they convened in the Eugene precinct, the ocean mist filtering through grimy shades. Local constables had assembled, perusing the dossiers. Ethan Cole, a captain grumbled. That title's surfaced prior. He retrieved an aged folder. 3 years ago, a land squabble outside of Portland. Gentleman fitting his profile acquired acreage under that title, never built, then vanished. He pushed a snapshot across the board. Kane's inhale snagged. The pixelated security frame depicted a man at a teller. Lofty raven hair, firm chin. Even in low clarity, the likeness was evident. Alexander Langford, but the garb varied, less refined. The specs, the stance modified. He wasn't masquerading as Alexander. He was another holy. Ruiz been in. So the spouse had another existence, funds, terrain transactions, and she accompanied. Kane wrapped the image. Perhaps not accompanied. Perhaps ensnared by him. The captain denied. 10 acres. Residents claim she endorsed for sculptures at a studio here under the title Mia Reed. That wasn't with him. She arrived solo. 2 titles, 2 personas, spouse and wife, each enacting distinct parts. Concurrent lives that curved and twisted, but never intersected visibly. Kane jotted memos, her thoughts sprinting. The dual life isn't solely his, it's hers too. That eve, in a seaside eatery illuminated by flickering bulbs, Kane examined the proof arrayed across the stall table. Sophia's and vouchers, Alexander's land deeds, 2 segments of a riddle that mismatched. Ruiz shoved his tea aside. Here's the issue. If both possessed aliases, perhaps they weren't casualties. Perhaps they orchestrated this, staged the evaporation, abandoned all. Kane denied. Then why the blood? Why forsake the Lexus visibly? She reclined, gazing beyond the neon glares and the pain to the infinite ocean afar. Something gnawed at her. It wasn't mere secrets. It wasn't mere scams. There was something deliberate here. Something designed to deceive. As the timepiece above the bar clicked past midnight, Kane comprehended the Langfords hadn't merely lived dual lives. They had been engaging a contest, and another was shifting the tokens. The Mist Studio perched on a tranquil avenue just off the waterfront in Portland, nestled between a tea house and a boutique vending driftwood crafts. Its exterior was modest. Gray clapboard, a lone glass door, no flash, no mess. A copper plate read simply, Mist. Detective Laura Kane lingered outside momentarily, observing strollers meander the pavement, unaware. Visitors with maps, pairs sipping lattes. None could fathom her purpose. That this studio might grasp the absent strands of a lady who had dissolved into legend. She thrust the sturdy door. A chime rang gently. Inside the atmosphere was crisp, scented lightly with clay and pine. Sculptures aligned the partitions. Abstracts in oceanic blues and silvers. Figures of forms softened with chisel marks. A gentleman at the desk glanced up from a sketch pad. Gray mane tied back. Specs balanced low on his bridge. "Good day," the gentleman said. His tone bore the polished serenity of one who had dwelt decades in serene spaces. Kane displayed her shield. "Detective Laura Kane, Seattle PD. I'm pursuing a lost persons inquiry. I heard a lady using the title Mia Reed acquired art here." The gentleman paused, then realigned his specs. "Yes, Mia. I recall her distinctly. Can you portray her?" The gentleman grinned subtly, as if evoking something intimate. Impressive, mid-40s, elegant. She attired with purpose, fitted coats, cashmere wraps. She bore herself like she'd matured amid studios, not like a visitor, more like one who desired visibility, but not recognition. Kane felt the terms settle like weights in her core. That was Sophia. What did she acquire? Modest works. Nothing lavish, but discerning. Always currency. Once she referenced a retreat she was furnishing. Did she arrive unaccompanied? The gentleman's demeanor altered. Typically, yes. But one afternoon near shutdown, a gentleman entered with her. He was reserved. Lingered while she conversed. I assumed he might be her spouse, but she never presented him. His demeanor odd, observant. Kane advanced. "Can you depict him?" Tall, dark mane, somewhat elder than her. I viewed him once, but he regarded her as if he possessed knowledge of her no other did. The gentleman shuddered faintly, as though recollecting. "Do you know where the works went?" Kane urged. He denied. She never shipped them. Always transported herself, said she preferred them near. Back in the vehicle, Ruiz browsed his jots. So she's procuring art under a false title. He's procuring land under a false title. What's the link? Kane drove wordlessly, the coastline extending boundless around them. Laundering funds, perhaps, or alibis for vanishing assets. Art is ideal for that. You can shift thousands in worth sans scrutiny. Ruiz shut his pad. Or perhaps they weren't collaborating at all. Perhaps they were evading one another. Kane pondered this. In every dossier, in every press cut, Alexander and Sophia had been depicted as a tandem, unified, alluring, inseparable. But here in Oregon their paths diverged. Two existences, two contests, adjacent, but not synchronized. That dusk, they conferred with a former investigator in Portland who had managed lost artifact cases. His flat reeked of cigar haze and must. Pieces leaned against the walls labeled with proof tags. "You mentioned Mia Reed," he murmured, caressing his whiskers. "I recall that title. Not from an offense log precisely, but from murmurs collectors discussing a lady who was shifting works off-grid. Valid deals superficially, but the origins were tangled. Masters swapped for replicas, that kind of thing. Risky realm." "Risky how?" Ruiz queried. "Art isn't merely pigment and fabric. It's tender for folks who shun banks. You engage in those exchanges, you enter gloom you can't exit." Kane sensed a shiver. Sophia Mia hadn't merely dabbled in art. She had been gaming in the fringes where currency and peril entwined. "Do you know who she transacted with?" Kane asked. The investigator denied. Never witnessed her. Just tales. But if she navigated that sphere, it wasn't coincidental. Someone inducted her. Someone who knew her utility. The subsequent morn, Kane and Ruiz sat in a cafe outside Salem assessing their jots. Daylight poured across laminate surfaces. The aroma of eggs and Java dense in the atmosphere. "She's deeper than anticipated," Ruiz said. "Art transactions, bogus titles. He's got terrain frauds." Both dual lives, so the query is, were they allies or targets? Kane agitated her Java distractedly. Or hunters? Ruiz eyed her keenly. Consider, she said. They evaporate traceless. The Lexus emerges staged like a offense locale. Blood within, but not theirs. They've aliases in 2 regions. This isn't mere vanishing. It's orchestration. Perhaps they weren't evading another else. Perhaps they directed the contest. Her tone lowered. And perhaps it ultimately overtook them. That eve, Kane lay vigilant in her in-chamber, gazing at the roof. The ventilator clattered, overwhelming the hush. She kept envisioning the initials incised in the in-lavatory portal. SL, Sophia's rebellion carved into cheap lumber. Why abandon that? Not dread, not mishap, purpose. Sophia had desired remembrance there. A dispatch scratched into the gloom. Kane shut her lids. Somewhere in the coastal quiet, secrets still hovered. And they were merely commencing to emerge. The terrain was naught but mist and hush. 50 acres of coastal scrub, a rusted lighthouse tilting against the horizon, the skeletons of old cedars thrusting up from the dunes. No dwelling, no shed, just a boundary marked in faded stakes extending to the sea. Detective Laura Kane stood at its brink, the wind pressing chill against her throat. Beside her, Ruiz nudged the sand with his shoe tip. This is what Alexander, Ethan Cole, paid cash for, Ruiz grumbled. Edge of oblivion. No views, no access. What was he intending? Harvest fog. Kane stayed silent. She strolled toward the core of the land, her boots grinding over wet pebbles. The quiet was heavy, the sort that amplified every noise. The jingle of her keys in her coat, the sigh of breeze through stiff reeds. Perhaps it wasn't about constructing anything, she said at last. Perhaps it was about concealing. They met the district clerk in a mobile office off the coast road. The woman, stout and flushed, leafed through logs on a messy desk. Cole acquired the land in '95, she said, sliding a dossier toward them. No developments logged, no dues since '96. We were set to seize. The dossier held one duplicated deed signed in a firm script. Ethan Cole. No loan, no bank trace. Pure currency. Kane examined the autograph, the loop of the E, the sharp cut of the C. It wasn't Alexander's clean flourish. It was rehearsed but altered. He'd mastered scripting a fresh name as if innate. Anyone utilize the land? She inquired. The clerk shrugged. Local teens camp there. Fishers traverse sometimes. Sheriff summoned a few times for disturbances, but nothing major. Disturbances? Ruiz pressed. The woman affirmed. Commotion reports, that's it. But people here don't probe. By late day, Kane and Ruiz were back on the terrain with a subsurface scanner loaned from state troopers. The coastal fog had started to thicken, shadows elongating. The device hummed as it glided slowly across the sand, the display flickering with hazy forms below the earth, stones, roots. Then another. Kane halted. There. A long oblong form, too precise to be organic, interred shallow, perhaps 3 foot down. They flagged the location with tape. Ruiz's mouth set. You pondering what I'm pondering? Burial, Kane said bluntly. The dig commenced the next dawn under a gray coastal sky. Officers shoveled while techs snapped every inch. The soil yielded grudgingly, fog ascending in veils. Then the tool hit timber. An aged trunk weathered and split, its metal clasps corroded. The officers hoisted it up, placing it on the sand. All encircled in quiet. Kane knelt. The latch had decayed. It snapped easily under force. The top groaned open. Inside rested bundles of documents wrapped in tarp. Kane raised one cautiously. Financial logs, deeds, visas, each with varied titles. Ethan Cole and Mia Reed. Others unfamiliar. Bogus personas, a collection of existences. At the trunk's base, below the documents, was a tinier case. She opened it with protected hands. Inside rested ornaments, bands, pendants, a timepiece, some male, some female, and one item that iced her veins. A youth's anklet. Wooden charms forming the name Lila. Kane's breath hitched. This isn't solely theirs. Ruiz leaned over her shoulder. Whose are these? She denied slowly. Mementos. That dusk, back at their inn, Kane arrayed the documents across the mattress, visas from 4 nations, birth records, permits. Some displayed Alexander's visage, modified with lenses, varied cuts. Others displayed Sophia's, but some displayed unknowns, folks she didn't identify. She phoned the lab. Process every title, every digit, match with lost persons. Hours later, her device vibrated. Detective Kane, the tech said, tone strained. Hits confirmed. Two of the visas align with active lost persons inquiries, one from Boise, one from Spokane. Both evaporated in the mid-90s, both unresolved. Kane sank heavily on the bed's edge. This wasn't just a duo living dual lives. This was a cemetery of personas. Ruiz rapped on the adjoining portal, entering with a flask of water. He paused, seeing her look. What? She rotated the visas toward him. Two of these pertained to individuals who vanished years past. Ruiz raked a hand through his hair. Damn. So what were the Langfords? Persona pilferers? Slayers? Kane's tone was low, nearly a murmur. Or accumulators, folks who existed through others until the stitches unraveled. She gazed down at the anklet again. The youthful charms worn but whole. Someone's offspring, she whispered. Someone whose title was erased, and they preserved this. Silence engulfed the room. The coast outside seemed to extend infinitely, as if it might engulf every secret entire. But the trunk had been uncovered, and whatever verity it held was scraping its way to light. The Seattle Police Headquarters meeting hall smelled of stale Java and worn flooring. On the board, offense scene snapshots from Oregon were scattered like tokens in a fixed game. The trunk, the documents, the ornaments, the anklet. Detective Laura Kane stood forefront, pointer in grip, her tone subdued but firm. Two visas from the trunk belonged to verified lost persons. A gentleman from Boise, last observed in '94. A lady from Spokane, vanished in '95. Both inquiries froze. Both titles resurfaced in papers linked to Alexander and Sophia Langford under aliases Ethan Cole and Mia Reed. She activated the pointer, beam landing on the anklet image. This anklet pertained to a youth. Preliminary logs indicate it was purchased in a franchise craft store in Idaho in the mid-90s. It forms the name Lila. We're matching unresolved minor vanishings with that name. Around the board, operatives from the FBI's Portland branch fidgeted in their seats. A local coalition had been rapidly formed. The Langford inquiry now vastly surpassing Seattle's reach. One operative advanced. Are you implying the Langfords were seizing personas from lost persons? Kane halted. The terms felt perilous even as she uttered them. I'm implying their evaporation is tied to at least two other vanishings, possibly additional. Another operative frowned. But were they culprits or casualties snared in the same mesh? Kane placed the pointer. That's what we must ascertain. Over the ensuing week, dossiers inundated. Crates of inquiry reports from Boise, Spokane, Eugene, and Tacoma. Vanishings that had once appeared haphazard were now aligned parallel. Kane labored until her vision stung, until the terms on the sheets merged. Pairs evaporating mid-voyage. Kin abandoning arranged meals, partial luggage, unbolted portals, and in every instance, minor discrepancies. Plastics utilized days later. Vehicles located deserted but whole. Acquisitions of sculptures, acquisitions of terrain, always currency. Ruiz sat opposite, his collar slack, arms rolled. It's like someone's knitting the same design repeatedly, he grumbled. Kane massaged her brows, or the same individuals, testing boundaries before notice. On the fifth eve, Kane drove solo to the Langfords' forsaken mansion. The fence groaned as she forced it, her beam slicing a narrow ray across the overgrown turf. Inside, the atmosphere was stagnant, laden with dust. She passed the vases frozen in wilt, past Sophia's strewn purse, past the mute kitchen. She halted in the library. Racks of bound tomes lined the walls. Fiscal logs, investment folios, surgical texts from Alexander's initial vocation. But nestled at the shelf's rear, almost concealed, was a slim gray folder. She extracted it free. Inside were snapshots, scores of them. Pairs beaming at cafes, youths in parks, kin posing by vehicles. Some evidently candid, captured from afar. Others appeared pilfered holiday images. None with labels. Kane leafed through mutely, her pulse pounding. Near the rear was an image she identified immediately. Alexander and Sophia, at a fundraiser. Sophia's palm on Alexander's limb. Both beaming, impeccable, envied. Behind them, blurred in the backdrop, was a young girl with a wooden anklet, charms forming Lila. Kane sat down solidly in the chair, the folder slipping from her grasp. This wasn't happenstance. The Langfords weren't merely linked to other lost persons. They had been observing them, recording them. The next dawn, Kane placed the folder on the coalition board. This, she declared, isn't mere persona theft. It isn't mere scams. The Langfords were maintaining records of kin that later evaporated. Snapshots, titles, relics. The anklet links directly to a youth photographed in their midst. Ruiz advanced, his visage strained. So they were picking targets. Kane denied. Or someone picked for them. Ponder. Why retain a folder like this? Why enter relics on coastal terrain? Why disperse hints between Seattle, Portland, and Boise? They desired discovery, but only fragments of the tale. The FBI operative at the board exhaled sharply. So what confronts us? A spouse and wife swindle duo, or something vaster? Kane gazed down at the folder at the hazy visage of the youth named Lila. Her tone was hushed, steady, but laden with fear. We're confronting a network, and the Langfords were merely one component. That even her in, Kane couldn't rest. She sat at the desk, folder open afore her. She traced her digit over the snapshots. Pairs beaming, youths chuckling, instants frozen pre-erasure. The dual life. It wasn't merely Alexander and Sophia's union. It was a whole structure of shades. And if the Langfords were absent, it wasn't because they faltered. It was because they knew excess. The morning session was muted, as if even the atmosphere in the meeting hall had learned to bear secrets. The folder lay open on the board. Snapshots of smiling kin gazing up like specters locked in joyful eras. Detective Laura Kane tapped the image of the young girl with the wooden anklet. Lila, that's the name on the charms. We ran matches. There are 4 active cases of girls named Lila who vanished between 1992 and 1997. All under 9 years old, all unresolved. She switched to the next projection. A class portrait pixelated from an aged lost child notice. Lila Santos, age 6, evaporated from a picnic area outside Boise in '94. Her kin never located. Kane's tone snagged slightly, but she proceeded. The anklet matches the one detailed in the report by her aunt. The Langfords, or someone connected, kept this as a relic. The quiet in the room intensified. One FBI operative advanced. You're implying the Langfords abducted youths? Kane's mouth set. I'm implying they accessed them. Whether as kidnappers, accomplices, or observers, unclear yet. But Lila Santos's anklet ended interred in Alexander Langford's terrain trunk. That's not fate. Across the board, Ruiz shifted in his seat. So the Langfords weren't merely dual lives. They orbited something bleaker. A syndicate, perhaps a web. Kane affirmed dourly. And if valid, their evaporation wasn't flight. It was purge. By dusk, they were in Boise conferring with the Santos kin. The aunt, Maria, resided in a simple adobe abode on the town's fringe. The garden barren, only a weathered swing against the wall. She opened the portal gradually, her palms quivering. Detectives, she murmured, guiding them in. You discovered something? Kane sat with her at the kitchen board, Ruiz beside. The scent of rice cooking on the range hovered. Kane opened a minor-proof pouch. Inside rested the anklet, its wooden charms dulled with time. Maria gasped, her palm to her lips. Tears surged instantly. That's hers. My Lila. She donned it constantly. I crafted it for her at the market. She possessed it the day they evaporated. Her tone fractured. Ruiz advanced softly. Recount again what occurred, ma'am. Anything recollected. Maria affirmed, shaking. It was August, sweltering. My brother Javier and his wife Luisa took Lila on a brief outing west just for a hike. They halted at a trailhead by the road. Javier went for water. Luisa remained with Lila. When he returned, they were absent. The vehicle still present, portals unbolted, snacks on the bench. Her tears glided silently down her face. We hunted everywhere. Police hunted. Not for years. Not. Kane's chest constricted. The scene echoed too many others. Deserted vehicles. Meals disrupted. Lives extinguished sans noise. She placed her palm gently over Maria's. We believe Lila and her parents were linked to other evaporations. We're laboring to comprehend how. And this, she glanced at the anklet, is evidence her tale isn't overlooked. Maria gripped Kane's palm with surprising force. Locate her. Locate what transpired, please. That eve, back at their Boise outpost, Kane and Ruiz pored over charts and dossiers. Blue pins marked towns. Boise, Spokane, Seattle, Portland. Threads stretched between them like veins in a shadowy form. Ruiz rubbed his eyes. So, every kin has the same motif. Abrupt evaporation, vehicle intact, plastic activity for days after, someone maintaining the facade vital. Kane affirmed, tapping the folder, and the Langfords were central. Sophia procuring art, Alexander procuring land, both utilizing pilfered titles. But the larger motif, her tone wavered. Ruiz leaned in. Utter it. Kane exhaled. Youths, they're the thread. Each kin possessed one. Each youth evaporated with them. And in every instance, a relic surfaces later. A toy, a snapshot, an anklet. Relics. The term hung dense in the air. By midnight, Kane sat solo in her chamber, gazing at the anklet under lamp glow. The charms shone faintly. Simple wood elevated to something holy by sorrow. She envisioned Lila's tiny palms slipping it over her ankle, proud to form her name. She envisioned the instant it was torn away, and she pondered if Alexander and Sophia had observed, if they had gathered, if they had engaged. The notion twisted her gut. She set the anklet back in its pouch and shut her eyes. Rest wouldn't arrive, only the resonance of Maria's tone. Locate her. Locate what transpired. The next dawn, Kane received a call. Detective Kane, the lab tech said, tone pressing. We extracted partial impressions from the visa pages in that trunk. One aligns Alexander Langford, another unidentified, female. And here's the twist. We found traces of youth's impressions on the ornament case. Multiple sets. Kane's grip tightened on the device. Youths? Yes, likely under 11. At least 4 different impressions. None align Lila. Kane's pulse thumped. This wasn't just one youth. There were additional. And the Langford's shadow was entwined in every one. The coalition's temporary base in Boise hummed with tension that never eased. Dossiers stacked waist-high on desks. Devices rang ceaselessly, and the whiteboard forefront was crammed with titles, dates, blue thread. Detective Laura Kane stood staring at it, marker in hand. Each kin pinned to the board had once been a tidy, joyful unit, father, mother, youth. Now they were icons. Blue lines extended from their origins to the coasts of Oregon, the studios of Portland, the trails of Washington. 7 verified evaporations between 1992 and 1997, she said to the room. Each fits the motif. Kin evaporates. Vehicle whole. Plastic activity for days post. And in each, a youth present. She ringed the term youths in thick blue ink. Relics linked to at least 4 of these youths recovered. Lila's anklet, a boy's fishing rod found in Spokane, a girl's diary in Tacoma, all interred or concealed among L. Langford property. Ruiz propped against the wall, arms folded, observing her. His tone was low but keen. So ready to utter it aloud? The Langfords weren't casualties. They were facilitators. A ripple through the room. Some affirmed. Others appeared uneasy. Kane's marker lingered in the air. Unsure if it's that straightforward, she said. What we possess doesn't prove they masterminded this, but it proves proximity to contact. Perhaps voluntary actors. Perhaps else. By dusk, the FBI techs brought fresh outcomes. Kane and Ruiz sat with them in a side chamber, the buzz of lights overhead. Cross-matching voyage logs, the tech said, pushing a folder across the board. We located the Langfords' plastics under aliases, placing them near 4 other evaporations, Portland, Salem, and Spokane, always within days of the kin vanishing. He wavered, then added, more. Traveler lists. Global flights cash paid. Titles matching aliases appear on flights to Canada, Zurich, and Vienna. Always post-evaporations, always with 2 or 3 seats. Ruiz advanced, his mouth set. So they transported youths. The tech didn't respond directly. The dates aligned too neatly to dismiss. Kane felt her stomach churn. Sophia's cashmere wraps. Alexander's impeccable attire. All camouflage. Behind, shades shifted. That dusk, Kane and Ruiz revisited the folder of snapshots. They arrayed the images across the in-desk, attempting to discern connections. Ruiz pointed to one capture, a kin beaming afore a lighthouse. This from Spokane. I verified the structure. That tower collapsed in '93. This capture taken months pre. Kane bent closer, and the kin evaporated in June 1993. Timing fits. She traced her digit over the hazy backdrop. A lofty man stood near the lighthouse steps, just blurred. Specks, beard, her throat constricted. That's Alexander. The find chilled her beyond expectation. He hadn't merely gathered their titles. Their relics. He'd positioned near them, observed them, recorded them. Like quarry. By midnight, Kane sat solo with her jots, fatigue humming in her cranium. The boundary between sleuth and casualty blurred in her thoughts. She kept hearing Maria Santos's tone, kept seeing the vacant gaze in lost youth photos. Why the youths? She shut her eyes and attempted to envision Alexander and Sophia at home in their grand mansion, beaming for locals, toasting at benefit events. How many eves had they sat at the same board debating which kin to track? Which youth to designate, or Kane's thoughts faltered. Were they themselves designated? The folder, the trunk, the relics, too meticulously preserved, too meticulously placed. Not relics, dispatches. And if so, who for? The next dawn, a call from Salem. A county deputy's tone crackled. Got something. A source who asserts to have witnessed the Langfords post-evaporation. Says they lived. Says they accompanied a collective. Kane's stylus froze over her pad. What sort of collective? The deputy wavered. Said they termed themselves the Shroud, modest ring, affluent, shifted between regions, sometimes abroad. They traded in more than funds. They traded in individuals. Ruiz cursed softly. Kane shut her pad gradually, her pulse roaring. The dual life wasn't just a clever ruse of aliases. It was a shroud, and behind it, something immense and predatory had lingered all along. The source sat in a blind interview chamber, his palms folded tidily on the board. He appeared ordinary, 50-ish, balding, neat polo tucked into faded slacks. Nothing hinted at the terms he would utter. Kane and Ruiz sat opposite, the whir of the tape filling the hush. Begin with your title, Ruiz said. The man fidgeted. Call me Robert. Not real, but the one I'll employ. If this escapes this chamber, I won't survive to rue speaking. Kane advanced. You said you witnessed the Langfords post-evaporation. Robert affirmed once. Not just witnessed. I accompanied them. Part of it. Part of the shroud. His gaze darted toward the glass, as if anticipating fracture. He spoke in a tone low and cautious. Like each term was a stone loosened from a barrier he'd once vowed never to disturb. It isn't a sect, not as folks imagine. No deities, no cloaks, no incantations. It's a ring, secluded, elite, constructed around dominance. Folks of wealth, physicians, attorneys, executives. They desired existences sans bounds. To step behind the shroud of regulation of ethics. And once traversed, no return. Kane's gut tightened. And the Langfords, they weren't originators. They were inductees. Ideal inductees. Rich, magnetic, attractive folks who appeared as if the globe revolved them. Approached in 91. By 93 they were committed. What did they do? Ruiz asked. Robert's gaze dropped. They probed limits. Initially funds washed through sculptures, terrain, bogus titles. Then voyages. Personas exchanged like tender. And then individuals. Kin selected because they matched the outline. Pairs with one youth. Always one youth. Kane felt her stylus quiver in her grip. Why one? Robert wavered. His tone raw when it emerged because it was simpler. Easier to obliterate a kin unit than one dispersed youth. One meant narrative control. No kin to attest. No remnants to query. He depicted the assemblies in coastal retreats, the rings of refined visages quaffing ale, while debating which personas harvestable. The way youth's toys sometimes perched on shelves, misplaced, reminders of authority held. They termed it the reap, Robert whispered. Seizing lives, seizing titles, not always by slaying, sometimes by integrating folks into the ring, sometimes by erasing wholly. But the youths, they were the toll, the tribute. You offer the ring your purity, and it offers you an existence sans repercussion. Kane's chest felt constricted, and the Langfords, what function? Robert's look hardened. Sophia was the allure. She could enter any studio, any soiree, and make folks feel selected. Alexander was the builder. He knew structures, enterprises, properties, trails of paper. Together golden. All revered them. All desired them at their board. Ruiz's tone keen. So what transpired? Why evaporate? Robert leaned nearer, his tone scarcely audible. They fractured the ring or attempted. Began retaining own logs, images, baubles, dossiers, safeguard, perhaps remorse, perhaps blackmail. But in the shroud, that's disloyalty. And disloyalty erased. Kane's heart thumped. The trunk, the folder, the relics, not relics. Safeguard. They desired exit, she whispered. Robert's gaze bleak. No exits. That's why you located their items, but not corpses. The shroud doesn't shed blood visibly. They evaporate you seamless, like never existed. The session concluded hours later. Robert, ashen and perspiring, declining more. He requested safeguard, though dubious of efficacy. Kane and Ruiz exited into the coastal night, the air chill against their visaged. The stars above sparkled keen and boundless. Ruiz ignited a smoke, his palms unsteady. So that's it. The Langfords part of some hunter ring, and they got remorse or avarice. Either way, the shroud ensured they were devoured entire. Kane silent. Her thoughts replayed Robert's terms. The tribute, the reap, no exits. She thought of Lila's anklet, small and vibrant, interred beneath dunes. A remnant of purity fed into something abyssal. And for the first time since the inquiry began, Kane wondered if she traced a offense scene or a ceremony. The tip emerged from an unlikely font, a lodge register in Vienna. Kane sat in the coalition office, weary texts swarming when the message arrived from Interpol. She opened it, her pulse hastening. Hotel Alpine, Vienna. Visitor log, November 2000. Title, Ethan Cole with Mia Reed. Cash payment. Kane read twice, thrice. The aliases matched the coastal trunk. The date 3 years post-Langford evaporation. She printed and crossed to Ruiz, hunched over charts. Observe. He scanned, then cursed softly. Cole and read them. Unless another in the Shroud adopted their personas, Kane countered. Ruiz denied. Too tidy, too purposeful. If erased in 97, how titles appear in Europe in 2000. Someone preserved them or permitted survival. That eve, Kane gazed at her in roof, the Vienna tip replaying. Robert's terms echoed, no exits. They evaporate you. So how Langfords escaped? She thought of the folder, meticulous images, interred trunk. If those safeguard, perhaps effective. Perhaps bargained exile, enduring as phantoms under bogus titles. But if survived, why no trace post-2000? And why abandon anklet, relics like trails? Sleep evaded, only unshakable sense Alexander and Sophia still out, observing, awaiting. Next morn, Kane and Ruiz met FBI decoder. On desk between lay visa from trunk. Scanned overlay, decoder said, found faint etchings below printed page invisible sans analysis. Code coordinates Kane's breath snagged. Where? Northern Montana, a ravine network. Remote Kane and Ruiz exchanged glance. Ruiz grumbled. More burials or messages, Kane said. 2 days later, they stood at mouth of granite ravine, breeze whistling through gaps. Guides led in, leaving supplies and comms. Hiked hours, sun etching shadows across gray stone. Then Kane spotted. Symbol carved into rock, ring bisected by horizontal bar. Same mark on trunk clasps. Below, interred shallow in gravel, another case, smaller, recent. Inside snapshots, Alexander and Sophia, distinct, standing in European plaza, garb current, grins broad. Behind, a steeple clock read 1998. Tucked below images, notes scripted in tidy flourish. We live, but not long. If located this, the Shroud already trails you. Kane's palms quivered reading aloud. Ruiz cursed. So new follower. Planted path. Why? Warn. Taunt. Kane folded note carefully. Tone steady, heart pounding. Because desired tale narrated, even if fatal. Back at base that eve, coast extended endless silent around. Kane gazed note by torch glow, thoughts racing. If Alexander and Sophia alive 1998, 2000, Shroud didn't erase immediately. Perhaps bargained. Perhaps fled. But if still alive, perhaps still fleeing, and perhaps ring still observing. The notion chilled beyond demise, because if Shroud erased Langfords, what chance Kane and Ruiz now grasping same secrets? First indication on drive back from Montana. Kane in rider's seat rented truck, ravine walls fading in mirror. Coast opening wide ahead. Ruiz drove silent, note in snapshot sealed folder on knee. In mirror, gray van emerged quarter-mile back. Initially Kane thought nil, but every slow for bend it slowed. When pulled at rest stop, it idled roadside, waiting. See, she murmured. Ruiz's eyes to mirror. Grip will tightened. Yes. Filled tank, bought snacks, lingered. Van immobile. Back on road, followed again. By twilight, crossing into Idaho, van diverted at junction, vanishing amid trucks. But disquiet hovered, clinging like mist. In lodge that eve, Kane checked chamber twice pre-bolting portal. Left hall light on, unable shake image unseen eyes from gloom. Lay vigilant, note replaying. If located this, Shroud already trails you. Next morn, at cafe outside Spokane, Ruiz slid booth opposite, tossing folded journal. Front Vienna edition last month. Kane unfolded. Blurry image lady exiting studio. Lofty, composed, wrap over shoulders. Froze. Sophia Langford. Mane shorter, visage slimmer but distinct. Caption below. Benefactor Mia Reed at display launch. Kane's throat tightened. Alive. Ruiz affirmed grimly. Or wants belief. Back at base, Kane arrayed snapshots, note, Vienna piece across desk. Threads tangled, impossible untangle. If Sophia alive, still using alias, still orbiting ring. But why surface public post years concealed? Voice inside Kane whispered answer. Because desired visibility. Desired tale pursued. That eve, Kane returned in find portal ajar. Pulse spiked. Drew weapon, pushing portal slow. Inside, nothing disturbed except desk. Proof folder open, contents arrayed neatly. Snapshots, note, each placed line across table, and center, fresh edition, single instant photo. Kane herself, exiting Montana ravine, folder under arm. Captured afar, gut iced. Shroud not just trailing. Already within probe. Kane called Ruiz. Arrived minutes, visage pale studying instant. Message, grumbled. Showing reach anytime. Kane affirmed, tone tight, like showed Langfords, like every kin pre. Long moment, neither spoke. Ventilator hum filled hush, too loud, too synthetic. Finally Ruiz said, not sleuths anymore, Laura. Targets. Later, solo again, Kane sat desk with instant. Turned it, half expecting back message. None, only image, only proof. Shroud always shade. Now mirror, and if Alexander and Sophia lived phantoms years pre-vanishing again, Kane realized same doom could closing around her. Lay vigilant till dawn, thoughts spiraling. Thought youth's relics, meticulous snapshots, folder. Thought Robert's terms, no exits. And wondered not first if Langford's left path not justice but someone like her follow replace. Plain descended Vienna dusk. Danube catching fading light like molten bronze. Kane gazed window, reflection ghosting pain. Across aisle, Ruiz dozed, though palms gripped armrests tight, as if sleep braced impact. Told no one Boise destination. Instant in Kane's in erase safety illusion. Shroud inside ring now. Secrecy soul shield. As wheels hit runway, Kane whispered. If Sophia alive, lead us. If not, someone wants belief. Ruiz stirred one eye. Either, entering their stage. Studio narrow stone street old quarter, windows crimson curtains. Posters last week's display clung glass. Mia Reed, benefactor. Inside, varnish old stone scent lingered. Manager, slender man sharp features, welcomed halting English. Yes, Mia Reed, said leafing guest logs. Lofty lady, costly taste. Bought 3 sculptures, cash, very private. Have guest roster? Kane asked. Manager slid page desk. Tidy script signatures trailed sheet. Midway Mia Reed. Kane traced ink finger. Script matched Sophia Langford's notes 90s. Too perfect coincidence. Nowhere went. Ruiz asked. Manager denied. No locale, but left dispatch. Open cabinet handed Kane's sealed missive. Kane's pulse spiked front precise flourish for detective who persists. Open cafe square. Letter brief, paper thick, ink deep. Not absent. Not liberated. Pursue if bold. Below signature, numbers, coordinates. Kane swallowed. Another path. Ruiz tapped paper. Or lure. Pulling a step. Why? Save self bury us with. Street bustled visitors. But Kane felt press invisible eyes. Whoever, Sophia or Phantom, already shifting pieces. That eve in overlooking river, Kane stood window, gazing towers against violet sky. Believe her? Ruiz asked behind. Kane not turn. Script hers. Motifs fit. If alive once located. But what? Kane's reflection pale, sunken. What if Shroud permitted survival? What if using her lure us? Ruiz stepped nearer. Tone low, steady. Then already in grasp. Coordinates pointed west toward frontiers. Isolated woods. Ancient sites. As prepared to part, Kane checked satchel. Proof dossiers, visa weapon. Bottom satchel slip paper not packed. Gut clenched. Pulled quivering fingers. Instant. This not her, not Ruiz, Sophia Langford's self, standing studio portal. Same wrap, same eyes. Back, single line inked. She not yours locate. Kane dropped bed, breath snagging. Ruiz cursed softly. Step ahead. Always step. Kane met gaze, tone whisper. Then perhaps soulway locate Sophia, let them guide us. Outside, river flowed dark boundless under lights. Shroud pulled across sea deeper circle. As Kane lay vigilant for in gloom, new final move coming. Not from her, not Ruiz, from Sophia, or remnant her. Forest silent, except crunch boots frozen foliage. Kane pulled coat tighter, breath clouds pale. Ruiz walked ahead, beam cutting dense birch oak. Coordinates lead patch wild on Austrian border. Ours nearest hamlet, remote no hear cry. Kane's hand brushed letter pocket. Sophia's mocking script memory. Not absent. Not liberated. Terms felt less dispatch, more judgment. Found ruins near midnight. Stone walls crumbled ivy. Remains chapel long forsaken. Arches loomed broken bones moonlight. Inside air colder, walls centuries sorrow. Floor altar, ring chalk. Center, small lumber case. Ruiz approached wary, weapon raised. Snare ever, Kane whispered. Open case together. Inside another snapshot. Sophia Langford, distinct though aged, eyes shadowed. Sat dim chamber, palms lap. Back photo chose wrong. Cannot reverse, but you must witness. Below terms and other numbers. Coordinates. Ruiz cursed. Stringing us dogs. Kane gazed photo. Sophia's gaze burned paper, pleading, haunted, half defiant. Or begging finish couldn't, Kane murmured. Left ruins dawn, frost lungs. New coordinates led subterranean vault hillside, entrance half moss. Inside, beams revealed shelves rose, cases, dossiers, snapshots, archive. Kane's chest tightened. This breathed. Langford's safeguard. Each case labeled year. 1991, 1992, 1993. Inside, kin titles, voyage logs, vouchers, youth photos beaming unaware. Ruiz rifled papers, palms shaking. Everyone. Every evaporation shroud. Documented. Kane turned slow, their rear dossier. Marked Langford. Inside photos Alexander Sophia, news cuts vanished life, forged death cert, bogus visas bottom, final missive. Palms quivered unfolded. If found then absent. Both hunter hunted. Desired shroud then liberty. Fools. Narrate tale perhaps not recur. S.L. Kane's vision blurred. Terms not defiant. Confession. Alexander Sophia hadn't stumbled shroud. Chosen worn second skin, when tried shed ring consumed. Behind, Ruiz hissed. Laura turned. Entrance, figures silhouetted pale light. 3-4 still watching. Not constables, not residents, shroud. Kane's weapon already hand, though new futile. Figures not nearer. One raised palm warning, or blessing. Then silently melted trees. Ruiz's tone shook. Let live. Kane gazed dossiers, photos, Langford's final missive. Tone flat, hollow no. Wanted seen, carried, remembered. She placed missive back dossier shut case. Don't erase all, whispered. Choose survives. By emerged hillside, forest awake bird song. Daylight broke ruins, silvering stones. To passer, place abandoned, vacant, forgotten. But Kane felt eyes wait, unseen near. Alexander Sophia lived dual life, casualties culprits, marionettes actors. Chasing phantoms, Kane realized she Ruiz stepped ring stage. Shroud didn't harvest lives, harvested tales. Now tale belonged to. Press session brief. Ruiz podium, flanked officials, uttering terms all new measured. Global proof, organized evaporations. Long unresolved inquiry, new docs. Probes continuing. No shroud mention. No forest figures, no titles. Not Alexander, not Sophia. Kane watched room back, visage shadowed. Journalists jotted, style eager narrative never given. When Ruiz finished, met eyes crowd. Look exchanged silent, weary, unbreakable. Weeks later, Kane sat kitchen board Boise. Coastal light slanted blinds, striping folder table. Not original. Sealed evidence. Copy. Inside Langford's photos, aliases, final missive. Trace Sophia's script fingertip. Both hunter hunted. Terms wait confession, also heritage. Somewhere, ring existed, perhaps watching, perhaps choosing next kin evaporate. Sophia, alive or long deceased, insured tale not vanish silence. Written escape erasure. That eve, sleepless, Kane stepped outside. Coastal sky wide above. Boundless stars pricked black. Thought ravine trunk, interred relics, anklet youth not spared. Thought Sophia's visage photos, beaming public, hollow private, dual life, dual end. Kane shut eyes, breathed dry night air. Carry tale forward, not evidence, not legend, but verity, jagged incomplete. Because end, survival not living. Being remembered. Dossiers remain sealed. Ring unbroken. In dim world corner, shadows crossed wealth hunger, power silence, shroud waited.